over a period of time, the 10th schedule has completely failed to stop defections. What was a retail activity became a wholesale activity in the 90s. And from 2014 onwards, it's a mega mall activity. Now, not only MLAs go, but along with them, lock, stock, and barrel, their parties also go. So the 10th schedule has completely failed to achieve its original objective for which it was conceived, conceptualized, and implemented. Conversely, what it has done, it has sucked democracy out of your legislative institutions. It has made parliamentarians and legislators instruments of whip driven tyranny.
But there's a catch, isn't there? You believe that if your bill is accepted and discussed in the House, MPs individually will want to support it because it's in their interest to do so. But equally clearly, party leaderships will oppose it because they believe it's in their interest to oppose it. And so the very thing you want to amend will be used against your bill being passed.
So essentially, that's the conundrum. And it would be interesting to see how political parties then line up on which side of this bill once it gets taken up for discussion. And I do hope third time I'm lucky and at least it gets marked up and discussed in the House.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Has the Anti-Defection Law made MPs voting machines for their party leadership, denying them the right to act according to their conscience? And do we need to broaden the collegium that chooses the Election Commission to ensure a better balance between the government and the opposition? My guest today believes the answer to both questions is an emphatic yes. Joining me now to talk about the reforms that he stands in support of is the Congress MP from Chandigarh and former Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Manish Tewari. Manish Tewari, you've introduced a private member's bill in the Lok Sabha seeking to critically amend the Anti-Defection Law. I want to talk to you to begin with about those amendments. First, you want to amend the provision that MPs can be expelled if they vote against their party's whip on any legislation. Can you start by explaining to the audience why you believe this is an important amendment?
Well, first of all, Karan, thank you very much for inviting me to your show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I introduced this private member's bill for the first time way back in 2010. And I introduced it again in 2021 and then again in 2025. The Anti-Defection Law was a very noble instrument when it was conceived. Essentially, if you rewind back to the decade of the late 60s and 70s, you had this politics of Ayaram, Gyaram, a gentleman crossing the floor 8 times in a day. And so therefore it was felt that there should be a law to proscribe defection. And that's how the 10th schedule came on the constitutional statute. But over a period of time, the 10th schedule has completely failed to stop defections. What was a retail activity became a wholesale activity in the 90s. And from 2014 onwards, it's a mega mall activity. Now, not only MLAs go, but along with them, lock, stock, and barrel, their parties also go. So the 10th schedule has completely failed to achieve its original objective for which it was conceived, conceptualized, and implemented. Conversely, what it has done, it has sucked democracy out of your legislative institutions. It has made parliamentarians and legislators uh, instruments of whip driven tyranny. So essentially, what this private member bill says that except for those situations where the stability of a government gets impacted, or for example, if there's a vote of confidence or a vote of no confidence, there's an adjournment motion, there are finance bills or money bills, which is that if government loses, then it has to go, or if the opposition wants to make the government lose, then you cannot defy the whip. And if you defy the whip, you automatically lose your membership. Otherwise, rest of the legislative space, free it up. Allow more debate, discussion, not only within parties but also intra-party. And the classical example of this is if you look at parliamentary debates between 1950 and and 1985, when this was put on the statute, and between 1985 and 2025, there's a marked difference in the quality of the debate. For the simple reason that you have some joint secretary incubating a bill, and then a minister reads out a prepared statement. Whips are issued on either side, vote for or against. So that's why when government meets for legislative business at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, at times there's hardly a quorum. And legislative assemblies have completely gone for a toss. Some of them don't even meet for maybe 3 weeks in a year.
Absolutely. In fact, you write that at the moment, the anti-defection law as it stands, and I'm quoting you, transforms elected representatives into mere voting machines, stripping them of their imperatives of constituency, of conscience, of common sense. And this is because, as things stand, they can't vote against the diktat of their party on issues that may matter to them personally, that may matter to their constituents or their constituency's concerns. You believe MPs should be only made to follow party discipline on confidence motions, no confidence motions, and financial matters, i.e., on issues that can affect the life of a sitting government. On other issues, MPs should be free to vote as their conscience dictates.
Absolutely, Karan, and you got it spot on. The fact is that earlier, when an MP's vote mattered on legislation, people would walk the extra mile, they would research best practices, they would look at law all over the world, and then suggest amendments for the simple reason if they were able to build a broad coalition of support, they knew that the amendment would go through. And there was no tyranny of the whip to contend with. All that has gone completely for a toss. So, therefore, you have a whip that there's a bill in the afternoon, you have to vote against it or you have to vote for it. So, where is the space for anyone to even apply his or her mind to make legislation better? And in India's case, legislations go on for 100 years at a stretch.
Let me put to you one of the consequences of your amendment. Won't it mean that on a load of other matters, such as economic reforms, NREGA to take an example because it happens to be in Parliament at the moment, on social measures, on foreign policy issues, parties will now have to make special efforts to convince their MPs to follow the party line, and they may or may not succeed.
That is exactly what was happening between 1950 and 1985. Weren't we a thriving democracy then? Won't parties talk to their members and won't the treasury benches really try and build up support even among their backbenchers? That is how democracy works. Nowhere else in the world, not in the House of Commons, from where we've inherited these traditions, or anywhere else, does a whip have a coercive consequence. Whips are issued. If you violate the whip, the party can always not give you a nomination the second time over. But beyond that, there are no consequences at all. Here, the consequence is violate the whip, lose your membership.
So, in a nutshell, what you believe is that you are holding the individual conscience of the MP above loyalty to his or her party's leadership determined line of thinking, except on those three critical issues of confidence motions, no confidence motions, and financial matters. On all other things, the individual conscience of the MP is what you're protecting and giving space to.
Not only that, I'm also protecting the right of the elector. After all, at the end of the day, a member of parliament or a legislator is elected by the people. Yes, the party gives him the ticket or the nomination, but eventually he's elected by all the electors who form a part of that parliamentary constituency. But his or her parliamentary life is really run by the party. There is an inherent contradiction out there. So, therefore, while you should be representing the interests of your electors first, in addition to the interest of your party, there cannot be a situation whereby the elector, the fundamental constituent of a democracy, becomes subservient to a political party.
Quite right. Alongside protecting and creating space for the conscience of the MP, you're also protecting and creating space for his constituents' concerns and views, because he's there to represent them. And if those views can't be represented because of a party whip that goes the other way, then those electors, as you put it, are being unrepresented, their voice is not being heard.
Absolutely. Spot on.
As you pointed out in your first answer, you first tabled this bill in 2010, you then tabled it in 2021, and on both occasions, it didn't succeed. What are the chances you'll have better luck this time?
Well, Karan, as you know, private members' bills go by lottery. So if it gets marked up and it gets discussed, I am quite confident that we will be able to get a broad coalition of support across political parties because, frankly, members of parliament or legislators are circumspect. They will not articulate it as loudly as I am at this current point in time, or I did through the private members' bills that I have moved. But the fact is that everybody is unhappy with this situation. It, of course, suits the party leaderships because you do not really have to walk the extra mile with your members. The whip does it for you. But is this the democracy which was conceived by the founding fathers?
But there's a catch, isn't there? You believe that if your bill is accepted and discussed in the House, MPs individually will want to support it because it's in their interest to do so. But equally clearly, party leaderships will oppose it because they believe it's in their interest to oppose it. And so the very thing you want to amend will be used against your bill being passed.
So essentially, that's the conundrum, and it would be interesting to see how political parties then line up on which side of this bill once it gets taken up for discussion. And I do hope third time I'm lucky, and at least it gets marked up and discussed in the House because we'll exactly know as to who stands where on this very fundamental question of democracy.
Let's then come at this point, Manish Tewari, to a second reform that you also have advocated. This time you advocated it in an article that you wrote for the Asian Age on Sunday. It's to do with the Election Commission. Because, as you put it, many citizens and political parties have raised serious concerns about the Election Commission's neutrality, you believe the collegium that selects the CEC and the ECs should be expanded to include the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha and the Chief Justice of India. Can you explain how would that help?
Well, Karan, I articulated this proposal when I led the debate on electoral reforms on the 9th of December 2025 in the Lok Sabha, and subsequently followed it up with in my column in the Asian Age. The one takeaway from the debate on electoral reforms which took place in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha is that the collective opposition has completely lost confidence in the Election Commission. And if I was the Election Commission, I would worry about this very, very seriously because what was conceived as a neutral umpire, as an arbiter of the democratic process, now is seen to be an extension or a department of the government rather than an autonomous institution. Now it all goes back to the selection process per se. When this matter was being heard in the Supreme Court, the court itself had suggested that the Chief Justice should be a part of this collegium, and in the interim, between when the court was hearing the matter and this law was brought by the government in 2023, if my memory serves me correctly, the Chief Justice was in fact a part of the collegium to select the election commissioners. Subsequently, the government decided to do away with it. So, therefore, you have the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, and the Leader of the Opposition. It's a no brainer. 2:1. There is the government will always have its way. Now, the consequence of this is that the neutrality, the impartiality, and the unarbitrariness of the election commission is seriously under question. So, if you have two and two from the government, two from the opposition, and the Chief Justice by name, not his delegate, the Chief Justice of India himself, that actually becomes a balanced situation whereby decisions can be by consensus. But if they are by voting, then the swing vote is with the Chief Justice of India.
Now, there's no doubt that your expanded collegium would have both the opposition and the government given equal weightage. Do you believe this is essential for the credibility of the Election Commission? And until this happens, and if the process of selecting commissioners remains skewed the way it is, the very credibility of this institution, which is critical to our democracy, will be not just damaged, but will be diminished and destroyed.
It unfortunately has been diminished. And therefore, if the Election Commission wants to stop its credibility from being destroyed, I think the Election Commission should itself propose this reform to the government. That let this election of the Chief Election Commissioner and the two election commissioners be done by a collegium which is evenly balanced. Because at the end of the day, Karan, all of us will go. The Indian democracy, the what the founding fathers had conceived needs to go on, and it needs to go on in a manner in which it is credible even in the polarized environment that we live in. And so therefore I do believe that those people who are supposed to be its neutral umpires, their selection process is the starting point of that impartiality.
Now, the two reforms that we've discussed, the first to do with the anti-defection law, the second to do with the collegium that selects the election commissioners and the CEC, cannot pass unless the ruling alliance supports them. Have you reached out to the BJP? Have you reached out to the allies of the BJP?
Karan, that stage has not come as yet. Only when the bill comes up for discussion, that is the point in time that one needs to see as to whether there will be some people brave enough to be able to stand up and call a spade and support these initiatives. Till the time the bill does not come up for discussion in the Lok Sabha, it is really an effort which would be very premature.
I understand what you're saying. Let me then end by putting two twists in the tail to you. Firstly, if your reform of the anti-defection law is passed, it would allow MPs to vote as they want in terms of changes to the collegium that chooses the election commission. And since the government probably doesn't want to change the collegium, they are unlikely to accept your anti-defection reforms. The two bills move interests in different directions, don't they?
Well, if the government, which has an equal stake in ensuring that the credibility of the election commission remains, because eventually it is going to end up hurting the credibility of the government if the election commission is and is today perceived by a very wide section of people in this country as a department of the government, then it is in the government's interest to actually amend that particular section of the law which they had passed in 2023 or which Parliament passed in 2023 and just get on with it. So therefore, that's a non sequitur. Insofar as the anti-defection bill is concerned, again, one needs to just go back and do a reality check. The 10th schedule was never conceived to suffocate democracy in legislative institutions. It was conceived to stop defection. Has it achieved that objective? The answer is no. So if it has not achieved that objective, hasn't the time come then to amend it, whereby you can also proscribe defections, but at the same point in time, free up the legislative space.
The truth is, the success of the reforms that you're advocating hinges critically on the leadership in the first instance of the anti-defection law, on the leadership of political parties. They have to accept the time has come for them to loosen their grip on their MPs. If they're prepared to do it, they will give their MPs permission to support your bill. If they're not, you'll have a problem. And in the second instance, in the case of the reforms of the collegium of the Election Commission, you have to convince the government because it's in the government's capacity to deny it. And that's the problem. The challenge is huge, isn't it?
Well, eventually, every journey starts with a small step. And the reason why I've been advocating these reforms consistently, the anti-defection law reform for 15 years running, is because I believe it is critical for the survival of our democracy. And I do hope other people also are able to rise above parties and political interests and see that if democracy survives and democracy thrives and the legislatures make better laws, it is going to be better for the country and even better for them.
I wish you luck, Manish Tewari, because both the reforms that we've discussed are critical to the future of India's democracy. They are in the interest of India's democracy. They deserve to be passed. Whether they will be depends a lot upon the extent to which you can influence party leaderships and influence the government itself. I wish you luck, and I thank you for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Karan, for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.